Good evening. We're continuing with the laws of Sefirah. We're in the Mishnah Berurah Tuf Pei Tes Daled Tuf Pei Tes Gimel 489-3. And last time we talked about the proper time to count Sefirah, and we said that the appropriate time to count the Omer is when 3 stars come out, Seisa Kachavim. Because there's a debate when the Jewish evening starts. When does the next day start? Is it at sunset, or is it at Seisa Kachavim? Is it at Shkia, or is it when the stars come out? So, since there's a debate, we try to fulfill all opinions, and we count Sefirah after the 3 stars come out, which is the later time when it is for sure night. And in Manalapin around this day, it's about 8:11, 8:12, around there. So now what happens, very often, especially in Manalapin, because not everyone lives very close to Shul, we daven Mincha Mariv together. So we'll daven Mincha right before sunset, and we'll daven Mariv right after sunset. So what does a person do to count Sefirah? Should he count Sefirah with the Minyan, or should he wait till count later when he gets home? So let's see what the Shulchan Aruch has to say in the Mishnah Berurah. This is Hamispalel imatzima rebod yom. If somebody davened with the congregation earlier in the day, Mona imahim below bracha, he should count with them without a blessing. V'im yiskor balayla yivarich v'yispor, and if he remembers to count at night, then he should count at night with a blessing. V'afilo ana amen al berkas hakahal im haidaita shalolatzeis yachzer yivarich v'yispor balayla. And even if you answer amen to the blessing of the congregation, if you have in mind to not fulfill your obligation at that time, you should go back and count at night. So let's see the Mishnah Berurah who's going to explain what we just read. So mibod yom yesh machronim, there are those authorities, Shapir explained, when the Shulchan Aruch says that we're a case where the congregation is davening earlier in the day, we're talking about where it's ben hashmashos, where it's after sunset. It's after sunset, but before the stars come out. You can look in the Bir Halacha where he brings other explanations for what the Shulchan Aruch is talking about. V'yotzen azidei Sefirah leposkim de Sefirah lehu. So we mentioned last time that there's a debate if the mitzvah of Sefirah to count the Omer nowadays, is that a rabbinic mitzvah or is that a Torah mitzvah? Now, since the time between sunset and when the stars come out is a question if it's the next day or not, is it still the previous day or is it nighttime of the next day? So the rule is, in general, for a rabbinic mitzvah, you can be lenient anytime you have a doubt. And for a Torah mitzvah, you should be stringent. So he writes that since most poskim hold that Sefirah nowadays is rabbinic, so therefore the congregation is counting early because they're going like those opinions which hold that Sefirah is rabbinic. And since it's rabbinic, you can count during that questionable period called ben hashmashos. So the Mechaber says like this: since technically, according to many opinions, you could fulfill the mitzvah, what you should do is you should count with them, but without a blessing, and you should think the following in your head. Im eskor achar kach balayla limnos einani rotze latzes b'sefirah zu v'lakami b'haga v'alken kishigez manachak yivarich v'yispor. I am Berlach. Says you should think like this. Say, I'm going to count Sefirah now with the congregation at the early time. Now, if I remember later to count Sefirah in the better time, then my Sefirah counting now doesn't count. But if I don't remember later, then it counts. Because we want to count with the congregation in order that maybe we'll get home after shul and we'll get involved in whatever we're doing and we'll totally forget to count Sefirah, so we'll have lost the mitzvah totally. Whereas if we count with the shul, at least we'll get the mitzvah according to many opinions. So again, the final rule is that a person should count without a bracha, and have in mind that if he remembers to count later with a bracha, the counting that he did now does not count, does not fill the mitzvah. Shalom latzes. He has to have intent not to fulfill the mitzvah. So he says that you need to have explicit intent that if you remember later, you're not fulfilling the mitzvah now. The reason is because there's an opinion that holds that mitzvahs don't require intent. So if you didn't have that explicit negative intent, then you actually did fulfill the mitzvah. So you have to have explicit intent not to fulfill the mitzvah. And we said and you'll count later with a bracha. Va'afilu be'erev Shabbos shekvar kibul Shabbos v'gam ispalim atzibor v'ilo hachi yivarach v'yispor b'layla. He says the same rule applies on Friday night. Why would Friday night be different? Maybe you would think it's more of the next day, because why? We accept Shabbos early. Many people accept Shabbos early, so before it's actually Shabbos, they say prayers such as Kabbalah. We say Kabbalah Shabbos, where we accept Shabbos, so we can officially accept Shabbos earlier on the day on Friday, before it's actually Friday night, and we have to keep all the laws of Shabbos. So maybe you would think you could still count Sefirah with a bracha earlier because you already accepted Shabbos, and for Shabbos issues, it's already the next day. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, you still should preferably count later. Kevin shelo ratza lasis b'meshi saper imayim ben hashmashos kasu achorna dim yetzo kachav mutar lo lispor afilu lo ispal adayin marav v'afilu hu b'motzi Shabbos dahalayla hu lechol milei v'afilu kadosh lahavdil mutar kodem tefila al she'asav b'malacha ad sheyavdil. So he says that you should wait till later to count with the bracha, and he says also that if the stars come out, this is another thing, a separate issue, that if the stars come out, you're allowed to count Sefirah even if you didn't daven Marav yet, even if you didn't daven the evening service yet, and even Saturday night, it's considered night for everything, and you can even make Kiddush and make Havdalah before you daven. Okay, so that's a little bit different point than what we've been discussing up until now. But again, so to review, the times for counting Sefirah. The best time to count Sefirah is after 3 stars come out, which is about either 42 or 45 or 50 minutes after sunset, which around this time of year in Manalapan is like 8:11. Now, what do you do? And the reason why we should be stringent for that is because, first of all, the Mishnah Berurah brought up earlier that many hold Sefirah is a Torah obligation nowadays, and if it's a Torah obligation, then one shouldn't be lenient to count in this questionable time where we're not sure if it's the next day. Also, if you look in the Bir Halacha on the previous page, he cites other reasons why we shouldn't be lenient. We paskin like Rabbi Yossi in the Gemara, maybe about Ben Hashmashos, and then we also have to be to do 2 leniencies in a rabbinic issue, and also this is an issue of entering into a question of a rabbinic mitzvah, which is not so simple that we go lekula. I believe it's a Ran that he quotes. So if you want to look into the more of the lumdis there, you can look at it there. So what does one do then if one's in a minyan where they daven marv before the stars come out? So what you do is the following. You count without a bracha with the congregation you have in mind, and you say, if I remember later to count, then my counting now does not matter. And you count, doesn't count twice. And you count later with a bracha. But if I don't remember later, then my counting now suffices. Okay. A lot of details, but I hope it was clear. And if it wasn't, please reach out, and more than happy to discuss it further. And if anyone's interested in these issues, about the issues of Ben Hashmashos, of the questions of day and night, it's a very interesting topic that affects a lot of mitzvahs in the Torah. Because a lot of mitzvahs we do, we just ate matzah. So we have to wait until it's the next halachic day. So this question arises again. When does the halachic day start? Is it sunset or is it 3 stars come out? So it's a very interesting topic. And if you'd like to learn more about it, please don't hesitate to reach out, and have a great evening and a great Shabbos.